And please welcome Joe Queally and the Colleen Bawn.
Thanks very much. I'm not sure it is me you're talking about at all. Thanks very much. My name is Joe Queally. I hail from between the mountain and the sea in Fanore, out in County Dove, out in County Borna, and I always maintain it as one of the finest places on the planet Earth because it's my place. People said to me one time when we were growing up, God, you had nothing in Fanore. And I said, we had everything except money. We really had everything except money. It was the nicest place, and all the old stories and all the music and everything else. It was just so beautiful. And I suppose that's my interest in the stories that I brought with me and the storytelling as well. I listened to a lot of the people and a lot of the stories of that time. So you're very welcome tonight to the Colleen Bawn. I have to be most awful careful of what I say because the author of the Colleen Bawn, Pat Fitzgerald from Adair, is with us here in front. And Pat wrote this absolutely book. You can't get it because it is a collector's item. It's sold out. So Pat, you're so welcome. And will you, when I make a mistake, don't say anything until the end. And Larry Brennan down there as well. Larry, thanks so much for just giving me the chance, I suppose, to do this. Sometimes when you're asked to do it, or when you asked to do it, I said it to Larry one day inside at Mass, and he said, yeah, we'll put it into Colleen Bawn or something, you know. And then the night comes and you have to do it. And another great historian here, Declan, where's Declan Barron here, see? Declan is out here, the thing, another great storyteller. But anyway, before we just talk about the Colleen Bawn, I always tell a little story because sometimes, you know, when we're doing, my last book was Echoes from the Civil War, and it was about shooting guards, and it was about the IRA and Free State, and it was all, you know, I tell a little story that I grew up with in Fanore, and Jimmy Whelan, I don't know if anyone know Shenaglish, but Jimmy told a very funny little story one time. We go up to commemorations up in Shenaglish for the Lucknan brothers. But Jimmy told a funny little story, so this is just kind of, if the bullseyes haven't got you already sweetened up, this is to put you in a kind of a humorous mood. But Jimmy tells the story about a woman out South Galway, and she was rather tight with the money. She was rather tight with the money. You know, she was the boss in the house. Sure, haven't they all? But she was the boss in the house anyway. And her young lad went to college in the University of Galway. And he was there anyway, so he got the university, and he went and he came home. For the first couple of weeks, he came home. He got a lovely little cottage, terrace cottage, down by the Clare. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. 2 rooms upstairs, very smart little house, and the rest downstairs. So for the first couple of weeks, he came home. Anyway, but after about maybe 6 weeks, there was no sign of him coming home, you know. And she wondered what the blazes is up. She said, I better go up. She said, I'll go up some morning, she said, and just see, you know, is my money being spent wisely? Is my money being spent wisely? Is he going to college or what's he doing? So anyway, as all mothers do, she prepared a beautiful stew for her son. Sure, why wouldn't she? Love of her life. Now, she always maintained that he was taken after the father, that he was a little bit wild in himself. But anyway, one Sunday morning, she said, look, if I hit the Clare, she says, around 12 or half 12, he's bound to be up. He's bound to be up. So she hit off anyway in the Volkswagen Golf, and sure enough, pulled in above to the Clare where the house was. Anyway, so she got out her 2 Dunch Doors bags. She had an apple cake. She had a loaf of brown bread for him, all bits of clothes and everything else, you know. Up to the door anyway, she left down the 2 bags and rang the doorbell. No answer. God, she said, I suppose the traitor, he must have been studying late, maybe. Maybe he needed a bit of sleep, she said. No. So after a while anyway, she pressed that little bit harder in the bell. And the next thing, she heard this fleet of footsteps running down the stairs. And the door opened. And this most precious, beautiful looking little lassie, said, yes, she said, yes. And she pulled back a smart little bit. Oh, she says, I'm looking for Sean Og. She said, I'm Sean Og's mother. Oh, hi, she says. I'm Vicky. She says, we were getting up. She says, anyway. My God, she says, this, this, this doesn't look great. So anyway, come in, she said. So she brought her into the kitchen anyway. And Sean O came down after, with the head down, after about maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Now, Jimmy Whalen said this was the kind of a woman that could ask 20 questions without ever opening her mouth. She looked at Sean O anyway, and he was at the range with a kind of a hump in him, because he knew, I suppose, maybe that she had put two and two together. Now, so anyway, she left up the past pleasantries, and they had tea, and she left up the goods up on the table and the whole lot, and she went home. So after about a week, anyway, she got a letter from Sean Oak. Thanks, ma'am, he said, for coming. He said, it was great to see you. But he said, by any chance, he said, do you know, he said, Vicky had, he said, a lovely little willow pattern sugar bowl. By any chance, he said, when you were packing your goods, would you have the sugar bowl now brought? Now, he said, Vicky is not saying that you brought the sugar bowl, or I'm not saying that you brought the sugar bowl, but would there be any hope you might have, by mistake, packed it in with the stuff? You know, my God, she got out pen to paper. Now, Sean Oak, she says, we'll cut to the chase, she says. I'm not saying, she said, that you're sleeping with Vicky, or I'm not saying that you're not sleeping with Vicky. But if Vicky slept in her own bed with the past week, she'd have found the sugar bowl inside under the blanket. The Colleen Bawn, I suppose there's many Colleen Bawns all around the country, and all around Ireland. There was many, many, many Colleen Bawns. And some of them were never heard about. Some of them ended up the craters in mother and baby homes. Some of them were murdered and never heard of, because that was what went over 200 years ago. That's what went. And I often wondered, and I was talking to Pat here about it, I often wondered, why did the Colleen Bawn down in Limerick, you know, what made that story so famous? You know, there was Colleen Bawns up in Sligo, there was craters killed, there was, you know, and the landlords of that time and the gentry of that time, they showed no pity to anybody. They were rulers, and like, why was the Colleen Bawn, you know, why was this one? And that's what intrigued me in doing the research into it. This Colleen Bawn down in Croom and Ballycahane, you know, and like an awful lot of people, I would say, and I'll give you the geography at first, an awful lot of people, you know, I suppose, you know, made a happy ending to the Colleen Bawn. You know, there was operas written on it. There was all that, you know, but there's no happy ending. You can't put a happy ending to the Colleen Bawn, because it wasn't happy. It was a terrible ending for the child of Croom. It was a terrible ending, and Bocelli, I think, and the Lily of Killarney, they put plays and all that, you know, and they ended it with an awful happy thing of the two of them, you know, going away together. But that wasn't the truth. That was far from the truth. And the Colleen Bawn, if you look at the geography of the Colleen Bawn that we're going to talk about, if you just look at Croom in your head, the village of Croom in your head, and come along from Croom down to Ballycahane, down to Cricora in County Limerick, you know, and then if you swing down to Glyn, and swing from Glyn back out to Kilrush, back out to Moneypoint, that's the geography. Ballylongford as well, Carrig Island and Ballylongford as well. So that's the geography of the Colleen Bawn. That's the ground, that's the soil of the Colleen Bawn. Ellen Hanley was a Colleen Bawn. She was born in 1803 in Ballycahane in County Limerick. And at the age of maybe 5 or 6 years of age, she was a beautiful child. At the age of about 6 or 7, her mother died. Her mother died. I'm not sure was there more siblings in the family. There may not have been. But after her mother died, maybe a year or a year and a half, when she was about maybe 6 or 7, she had to leave the family home, and she lived with her uncle, her mother's brother, John Connery, in Ballycahane. John Connolly was a Gracie, he was a shoemaker. And he looked after that child, with the greatest of care, as if she was his own. Absolutely looked after her, cared for her. He made shoes for the rich, and he made shoes for the poor, John Connery. He was a gentleman of the highest order that looked after his child. And at about when she was only barely 15 years of age, and this John Scanlan came from, I think Pat put it in his book, they were the midsers, they weren't the biggest farmers, they were mid-rich farmers. And this John Scanlan from Ballycahane Castle House, I don't know if maybe Fergus has the thing up to John Scanlan, and I have to thank Pat again for getting a picture of John Scanlan. So Pat's daughter drew it, and this is as good as what we'll ever get of John Scanlan, if I'm in the way. That was a picture of John Scanlan, described, I don't think it was actually drawn, but it was described, and I think the National Archives came up with a picture, and Pat's daughter, Christine, Catherine, did a drawing of it. But John Scanlan was, he was about 20, he was double her age, and she was only a little child. And really she was, I suppose the most beautiful thing that was inside any child is their innocence. She was that innocent. You know, sometimes when we see Dorothy Lang and we see the Lawrence collection and all that, and you see little girls, you know, and the innocence and the beauty of the people of their own place. And that was Ellen Hanley from Ballycahane. That was her. She was so innocent and so beautiful. And she had lived, she was only barely 16 years of age. But this John Scanlan, anyway, must have seen her and took an eye to her, because he was out shooting, he was out having game and all. He had come back from the British Army. He was a lieutenant in the British Army. So one evening anyway, it was very, very bad. As an excuse, he knocked on the door of John Connery's house, where Ellen Hanley was. The evening was very bad, the night was very bad, and sure, when he knocked on the door, I mean, to have someone like that was a big thing for the peasant people. They were known as commoners, or beneath the big people. So they invited John Scanlan in to the house, and it may have Stephen Sullivan, his buddy, might have been with him. I think he might have been with him as well. But it was a fake meeting. They staged the meeting to meet this Colleen Bawn, Ellen Hanley. And they were invited into the house, and they were offered the hospitality of the house. The young girl even got out of her own bed to let John Scanlan stay the night. And John Scanlan passed pleasantries, and he passed nice remarks to her. You know, and she was only a child, as I'm sure most of you have kids or grandkids at 14 and 15 years of age, only a child creator, you know. So he had, in other words, he had the ice broken in getting into the house. So after a couple of weeks again, he called again, and he was saying nice things to her, and eventually anyway, he asked her would she elope with him, and that he would get married to her. And the creator, I suppose, I don't know what happened to her little head. She didn't want to at first. She knew the class distinction was there. So Ellen Hanley, she didn't want to do it. But anyway, he coaxed her and coaxed her and coaxed her. And one morning, while John Connery, her uncle, was at Mass, she stole his money. Ellen Hanley stole his money of £100 and I think 12 gold sovereigns, and she eloped with John Scanlan. So the next day or two, he brought her into Limerick city, and it was a fake marriage. He had his friend Stephen Sullivan robed as the priest in the church, and Sullivan is here too. There he is, yeah. And Sullivan had he had him robed, so it was a fake marriage to the child. It was awful. It was terrible. Sullivan was described as here. And down here, he had the most remarkable had was that he had a hole in his jaw. Here, his jaw was broken, and he had a hole in his jaw. And anyway, the two of them, as she taught, the creator, the little Ellen, taught as a child, she taught that she was in love with this fella. I don't think she was, but she thought that he was in love with her. So the next day, anyway, that was whatever day they got married, or the fake marriage. But there was a fella, Lloyd Fitzgerald. He was known afterwards as Parson Dick. Was it Dick Parson? He was a parson in Glen afterwards. But he was a young fellow coming home from college. and he was returning back to his uncle the night of Glynn. He was another Fitzgerald. And he was coming back, and he was taking the boat from Limerick out to Glynn, and the boat was continuing on to Kilrush. So as he boarded the boat, he was only a young fella back out for Trinity, maybe what would have been maybe 18 or 19 or 20. But as he went into the boat, he saw this little girl inside, and she was awful forlorn, sitting down, and everybody could see that she was, not well, or she wasn't in good form. But just as the boat was pulling out from the quay, this vagabond jumped off the pier into the boat, and he waving a gun, and he having a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of beer in his hand. And he threatened to shoot everybody. That was John Scanlan. She introduced, after a while, Lloyd Fitzgerald, when they were moving out into the waters, I think he fell asleep. And she confided in him that she was in awful trouble with her marriage. Even that was only a day old. That he was spending the money, that he was a gambler and he was a drunkard, and he was spending the money she had stolen. And she introduced one or two people that took pity on her. She introduced him as her brother. Anyway, Lloyd Fitzgerald went home to the night. They were pulled into Glynn, and John Scanlan and Ellen went to Kilrush for their honeymoon. So he went into Glynn, and he went to he stayed the night there. But the following day, the night of Glynn and Lloyd, they went down to Kilrush. I think there might have been, there was fish markets that time, and they were big people. They went down to get fish. But didn't he meet Ellen again? Lloyd did, the young fella did, on his way up to the town. And he found out where she was staying, and he asked the person where she was staying to please look after her. But in the meantime, while he was there, he gave her an awful time. He never stayed with her. He was drinking the whole time. John Scanlan was drinking with her the whole time. And his friend, Stephen, Sullivan came, and he told Stephen Sullivan that he was fed up of his new bride, as he said, and that he wanted to do away with her. He wanted her. Now, the reason maybe very well could have been was he had never told his parents that he was married. He told Ellen, the time isn't right yet for me to introduce you to my parents. So he kept her in the dark, and he had a house in Glynn, out in County Limerick. So he asked Stephen Sullivan to get rid of the Colleen Bawn, Ellen Handley. So they bought a boat. They got a boat from Kerry, and they bought a boat, and a couple of days, now I'm talking about this was maybe a few days further on again, and they bought a boat, and they got a big round stone, and they hold the stone. This was the plan. They hold the stone with a chisel, and they put a chain down into it and filled it with lead. And the Colleen Bawn, Ellen Handley, was to be shot. Stephen Sullivan was to bring her out in the boat and shoot her with the musket, tie her around the chain, and dump her into the Shannon, and she'd never again be seen. That was the plan. So they sailed back anyway. She was total, I believe, she had no idea this was happening at all to her. She had a trunk of clothes with her that he had stolen from Ballycahane Castle. Beautiful clothes, silks and linens and the whole lot. He had stolen it from that. So Stephen Sullivan was out one day in the boat with this round stone, because they were just waiting for a chance to get rid of the Colleen Bawn. And I don't know, was it a swell of water or whatever, but didn't it throw out the stone and the chain out over the thing. So that was lost. That the stone and the chain was lost. So anyway, they sailed into a place called Carrig Island. It's just off of Ballylongford. And Stephen Sullivan was to take her out, the Colleen Bawn, out in a boat, and to shoot her, and to dump the crater in the waters. So they went into a house there. It was a lodging house that time. It wasn't a boarding house. It was a lodging house. So like the restaurants of today, you would call them, you wouldn't call them restaurants. That time they were eating houses. But this was a lodging house. And they stayed there the night. And Sullivan brought the Colleen Bawn out in the boat. And he got cold feet outside. And he said afterwards, when he looked at her, he couldn't shoot her. He couldn't kill her. So he sailed back again to Carrig Island, and Scanlan was furious with him that he didn't kill her. He was absolutely furious with him. And in a way, Sullivan was a small little bit scared of Scanlan. Now, the reason that Scanlan wanted to get rid of the Colleen Bawn so fast was, number one, his parents didn't know. Number two, he was the heir to Ballycahane house. And his mother had a match made for him with a big shot inside maybe Croom. Inside in Croom. So he was going to be out of that. So the Colleen Bawn, Ellen Hanley, had to be got rid of sooner or later. So anyway, he sailed back, and anyway, 2 or 3 or 4 days later, he asked Scanlan, he asked Sullivan, would he go again? So he gave him, I know, a couple of pints of whiskey, and he said, you have to bring her out this time, off of Carrig Island. It's near Ballylongford in Kerry. So Sullivan, anyway, prized up with whiskey, took off the Colleen Bawn again. Now, Scanlan was to go with them on that trip. And just before they left the pier, Scanlan feigned sickness. And he said, look, I don't feel well, because he didn't want to be with Sullivan when he killed the Colleen Bawn. He wanted an alibi. He went away someplace else where he was seen and with somebody else. So in the middle of the night, Sullivan brought the Colleen Bawn out, and the creator, she was so tired, only a little child. She was so tired, didn't she fall asleep in the boat? And he knew if he fired a shot, the head would be heard all over the place. So he actually killed her he was so drunk, the first time he went to hit her, it was her hand he hit and he broke it. And the creator woke up. And anyway, he beat her up to pieces with the stock of the gun, and he had a rope. And he tied the rope onto her head and to her leg, and he dumped her with a stone around it and dumped her in, never again to be seen, as he thought, into the River Shannon. So she was missing. So one of the people who had been maybe kind of a little maid to her, Ellen Walsh. There's 2 Ellen Walshes. Ellen Walsh was one of the people that was in the lodging house. The second Ellen Walsh, anyway, asked him some days after, asked Scanlan, he said, where's Ellen Hanley? Where is she? Oh, he said, Scanlan said, she's gone to Kilkee. She's staying in Kilkee with friends. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks had gone after that. And she said, no, she's not in Kilkee. Where is she? And Scanlan said she eloped. She eloped with an American captain of a ship out in the estuary, the bay. She's gone to America. So there wasn't really a word. Now, the word had gone around that she was missing. And the Knight of Glyn had heard it. Just had got word of it. Now, he was the magistrate, and he was a big noise in the area. But the rope comes into play again, the rope that she was got with. But anyway, what really started in the investigation, then was that in the village of Glyn, a row arose between 2 hags one morning. A row arose. One of them had a shebeen pub, and the other had given her this beautiful silken, I suppose you could call it a throw, silken garment. And this woman, she was Sullivan's sister. She had given the garment to the publican for a bottle of whiskey. But the deal was that when she had the price of the bottle of whiskey, that she would take back the garment because it was very valuable. It was silk and linen, you know. So the row rose one morning when she had the price of the linen garment. She came back to the publican, and the publican wouldn't give it her. So the row rose between them. And the magistrate was called from Glencastle to sort the row between the 2 hags. So he went out anyway with this young lad, his nephew, this young lad, the student that I'm telling you about. And they went down to Glyn anyway, and the whole village was nearly watching these two hags having a go at each other. So just as the linen was produced, but when Ellen Walsh saw the linen throw, she whispered she went up to the Knight of Glyn and she said, that linen is belonged to Ellen Hanley. That's her vest. So the knight said, I'll take the linen cloth, he says, and bring it home, and I'll decide in a week. What? I'll decide in 1 week who will be the owner of it. Now, he was no more than at home, maybe half an hour, and 2 policemen rushed to his door and said that a body had been washed up in Moneypoint in Clare. Now, I think it was Carradota, I think was the name of the village, to be 2 stone throws from the Killimer car ferry, the Kilrush side of it. I think Derry Nahalla was the name of Carradota was the name of the townland. So he asked anyway, immediately asked his crew, the knight did, because now he had thinking that this was the Colleen Bawn. This was the murder. The knight was. He was a magistrate. So he sailed down the Shannon back to Moneypoint. And with him he brought Ellen Walsh, who had identified the linen cloth as that of Ellen Hanley's. And he sent for her, and he also brought, his normal boatman wasn't available, and he brought a fellow by the name of Patrick Keys with him, who just happened to be another boatman. So they sailed down anyway, and sure enough, they hit the strand in Moneypoint, and there was 2 men there, and there was a body of a young girl, and they had her pulled up from the tide, up in the sand, and they had her buried in the sand. They buried the child in the sand, and they put seaweed over her. So the magistrate asked them to uncover the body, which they did. The body was not in good shape. And he looked in, at that stage, the Knight of Glyn, he looked for the local police constable, Mr. Warburton. So he came. So now they couldn't identify the body. So all of a sudden, one of the Patrick Keys that came with the boat as crew, he had parked his boat, or he had moored his boat. He rushed in anyway, and he saw the rope, and he said, "That's my rope. I lent that to John Scanlan," he says, and Sullivan, he says, 3 weeks ago. And the magistrate said to him, "Are you okay? Are you sure of it?" And he said, "I am." So there and then, they swore in a jury to have an inquest. Now, they had the rope, they were sure of the rope that had been borrowed, but they weren't sure that it was the Colleen Bawn. It could have been anybody, but they were sure. And he asked him, how did he know the rope? And he had spliced the rope, tied it together. He says, "It's blue thread I put in it. I'd know my splice," he says, "any place in the world. That's the rope," he says, "I give to Scanlan, and that's the rope I give to Sullivan." So anyway, Ellen Walsh hadn't seen the body. She wanted to stay away from it because it was a difficult area. It was very, very difficult. So now they had a jury impaneled for the inquest. The magistrate had, and Mr. Warburton. They had a jury, and they had circumstantial evidence of the rope, of the linen throw before this, that had come to light. So all of a sudden, they asked Ellen Walsh, was there anything that she could see that would identify the body? Without any doubt. Because there was a little item of clothing, a bodice, and she said, "Look, it is hers," but I couldn't be absolutely sure. But she said, if I saw her face, I would know it, because she had 2 very prominent teeth here in the upper jaw. So anyway, Mr. Fitzgerald the Knight, he said, "Can you come over?" So immediately she saw the body. She said, "That's Ellen Hanley. She had two prominent teeth. I'd know it any place," she said. So there and then, the inquest declared that the girl was murdered, that Stephen Sullivan and John Scanlan had murdered her. And they put out a warrant there for their arrest. There and then, they put out a warrant for their arrest. Now, the two lads had gone missing. The two lads had gone missing, no sign of them, because certainly Scanlan would have said, you know, because it was a commoner, that Ellen Hanley was a commoner, that there would be nothing done about it, because this had happened in many places. But in fairness, I think, and I know what Pat agree with me in this, in fairness, I think it was the perseverance of the night of Glynn. So he put out the warrant for the two lads, and couldn't be found. Could not be found anyplace. So after a couple of weeks, somebody had spotted John Scanlan. He had let down the guard, and he had more or less a kind of a free man, and he was throwing himself around in Glynn, and he was but not arrested. They were afraid to arrest him. The police were afraid to arrest him because these were big people. These had a say in the parliament. These had a say. They had, you know. But anyway, the Knight of Glynn wrote to the police in Dublin, and the police in Dublin wrote, said, look, it's a local thing. You have to arrest him. So one night, the local constables, anyway, the whole lot of them, hussars, maybe 40 or 50 of them, they surrounded Ballycahane Castle because they had word got there was a big party on and the Scanlan was there. So they knocked on the door. They came the back roads. So they knocked on the door of Scanlan's Ballycahane house, and Mrs. Scanlan came out all dressed in beautiful black velvet, and she upbraided them and gave out to them how dare they come to a big house, that her son was innocent and the whole lot. And they said that she said that he's not here, you know. So they were going away anyway, and one of the hussars, didn't he drive his lance down through a loose lump of hair, hair, and out jumped John Scanlan, was inside under the hair. So they arrested him. They arrested Scanlan there and then, and they brought him to Limerick jail. I'm sure have we Limerick jail up here. What was? Go back there for one, Fergus, can you? That's the Colleen Bawn's grave in Boran, Killimer. And can you get the jail, Fergus? That's her flagstone of her grave. So they brought Scanlan here to the jail and charged him with the murder of Ellen Hanley. He denied the whole lot of it. He denied everything. He had anything at all to do with it. And anyway, his trial opened. They put him on trial. And they got no other. The biggest lawyer in the world at that time was the great Daniel O'Connell. And Daniel O'Connell defended John Scanlan in the court. We bit of that, Fergus, in the video, yeah, of that. So Ronnie Drew did a piece one time, and with a construction of Daniel O'Connell, and he defending John Scanlan because Daniel O'Connell said he wasn't married, it was a fake wedding, and that he couldn't have killed Ellen Hanley. If we have that, Fergus, maybe? No.
Gentlemen of the jury, you have heard the learned counsel for the prosecution warn you that the law seeks not blind vengeance, but justice. I would earnestly impress on you in particular the solemn obligation of dismissing from your minds any gossip or comments which you may have heard outside of this court. Any opinion or comment which you may have heard as to the prisoner's guilt, or for that matter, his innocence. John Scanlan has now been under detention for the past 4 months, and from our knowledge of human nature, it is too much to expect that he has not already been tried, not once, but many times, by the amateur lawyers and judges of the country cottage and the city club. Gentlemen of the jury, if you do not want to be false to your oath, you will put all such uninformed prejudgments resolutely out of your minds, and confine yourself strictly to the legal evidence that has been tendered in this court. The prosecution seeks to prove that the prisoner who now stands before you is guilty of the atrocious murder of his young and lovely wife within a few brief weeks of their marriage. And they ask you to believe that the impelling motive to this dreadful crime lay in the anticipated disapproval of his people when the fact of the marriage became public.
That was the first bit. Have you a second bit, Fergus?
Now, gentlemen, there stands before you the prisoner, John Scanlan. A young man of good family, good education, and good upbringing. Young as he is, he has already seen service as a lieutenant in the Royal Marines, where habits of discipline and restraint form an essential part of his training. Is this the type of man who would descend to the murder of a young and trusting wife? And for no greater reason, according to the prosecution, than that his parents might not approve of the marriage. Who would hang a dog on this far-fetched theory?
So that was a little pick. Now, the jury found John Scanlan guilty of murder. And the judge, that was the 15th of March, a year after, 1820. So they found him guilty of murder, and the judge sentenced him to be hung the following day. That was the 15th of March. And the judge sentenced him to be hung the following day in Gallows Green, Limerick. He was in the jail and he had to come over a Gauls Bridge. So on the morning of the 16th, John Scanlan was taken from his cell. And before he was taken from his cell, there's something that nobody has ever seen before with the case, was that the governor of the jail was Mr. Blackwell, whose family now are in Ennis, just as you went to Ennis. He was the governor of the jail. And the governor of the jail that time used to have a glass of whiskey with the person that was to be hung in the morning. So that morning, he had a glass of whiskey with John Scanlan. And these are the glasses that were used. Nobody has ever seen the glasses. They have never been seen. Them are the glasses that the governor, Mr. Blackwell, used for the morning John Scanlan was home. Them are the glasses the governor, the assistant governor, and John Scanlan used on the morning. I got them in Ennis when I was coming down the train about 6 months ago, and somebody, Helen Comer from Ennis and said, "Do you know that the glasses that John Scanlan drank out of are in Ennis and at Blackwell's?" And I said, I don't. I have no idea. But she said they are. And the Blackwells, and I rang the Blackwells and they said, yes, they're here. Our great-great-great-grandfather or whatever has them, kept them. So them are, I suppose, look, they're 200 and something years old, and them are the glasses that John Scanlan drank out of. So John Scanlan was taken from the jail and in horse and carriage, and he was brought, when he hit Gauls Bridge, the horses refused to go over the bridge. Some people said it was a sign of he being innocent. More people said it was a sign of he being absolutely pure guilty. And he was asked to confess to the crime before he was hung. And he was hung in Gallows Green in Limerick. The jail is where the town hall is now. He was hung in Gallows Green in Limerick. And he still said he was innocent before he was hung. So he was hung in that. They say that his body, that time with people, they would be given to the surgeons in the hospital. And I believe from folklore that surgeons would not accept his body that time for training purposes and whatever, that he was buried in some place in County Limerick. So that was the end of John Scanlan. Now Sullivan had, the chase Sullivan then, and he was gone, couldn't find him. This was months afterwards. Anyway, word got around that there was somebody in Tralee jail that looked very like him, or that fitted the description of Sullivan. So the night of Glyn's, the young fellow went down again, and he said, yes, there is somebody there in Tralee jail. So anyway, they found out somebody that knew Stephen Sullivan, and he went down into the jail and went down through the cells, and he put out his hand and he said, Stephen, how are you, or whatever. So Stephen Sullivan had gone into the jail in Tralee as under a false name. I think he had embezzled money or he had something like that. So they took him out of the jail and they brought him to the same courthouse, and they tried him for the murder of of Ellen Hanley, and he confessed to the murder. He said that John Scanlan had put him up to it. It was he that murdered Ellen Hanley. And he was sentenced to be hung as well. And he was hung, I think, the following day as well on the same place. And he gave an open confession before he was hung to the governor or to the police in Gallows Green as well. So he was hung as well. So the two of them got hung, and that created an awful sensation that time, that those people would be hung. Scanlan especially, not so much Sullivan. Scanlan tried to put the whole blame over on top of Sullivan. He said it was he that taught it up and to free himself. And even Scanlan's people went to Sullivan in jail to say, look, I did it out of my own bet, so as that the family name would be cleared. They didn't want the stigma onto the family name. Anne-Marie Reardon did a lovely song. With that, Fergus. Anne-Marie Reardon did a song on the Colleen Bawn. I probably have left out bits and pieces of it, lads. I haven't left out too much of it, Pat, have I? No. Okay. So that was Ellen Hanley, the creator, the beautiful child of Ballycahane Castle, of Ballycahane and Croom. Her home is about 2.5 miles from the Chapel Gate in Cricora, and her home is about, and that was a beautiful little child. I believe before she was buried in Boran Cemetery in Peter O'Connell's grave, that he gave her the grave.
I was going to tell you that.
Yes.
My husband's grandparents' grave, she's buried in.
Now, Peter O'Connell's grave.
Yes.
And I think her uncle John Connery and her father came to see her. They asked for permission from the night of Glynn to come to see her. They wanted to see their child before she was buried. So she was wrapped in blankets and she was buried in Boran Cemetery in Killimer. But she was, I suppose, it is emotional really, but she was so beautiful. She was so beautiful because she was born from the soil. She was born from the river. That's what held the beauty and the innocence inside in her, the little heart and soul inside in her. And to be taken from this life by that, as your man like a vagabond of the worst type, that he thought he could get away with it. But he didn't. The two of them are hung. And Marie Reardon wrote a song. So I'll take questions afterwards, and any question I can't answer, Pat Fitzgerald will answer it. So we'll have Anne-Marie Reardon did a lovely song on it. So we'll have that to finish up, Les, with that, and yeah.
As I sail down on Shannon waters one summer's morning long ago, I heard a young maid softly crying by Carrig Island where the wild winds blow. Remember me, love, when dawn is breaking. Remember me, love, when daylight ends. My ghost will rise o'er Shannon waters, and you hear me crying in the stormy wind. I stopped a while and I gazed upon her, this young fair maiden with beauty rare. Her silken hair hung down her shoulders as she cried her tears in the summer air. I loved you well, John, I love no other. I came to you, love, a fair young bride. You vowed for always we'd lie together and live content near the Shannon side. Your father roamed my land and corn, bright jewels rare your mother wore. I did not mind when they showed me scorn. I only loved you more and more. The seas were high and the storm was blowing. The tall young boatman, he smiled at me. He threw my body to the wild winds rolling by Carrig Island, where the wind blows free. My eyes grew dim and my tears were flowing. My heart was aching for this maiden fair. When I looked again with the wild waves rolling, she'd gone forever, but I heard her say, remember me, love, when dawn is breaking. Remember me, love, when daylight ends. My ghost will rise o'er Scanlan waters, and you'll hear me crying in the stormy wind.
So I suppose just to finish up for my own bit before the questions and answers is, I suppose the emotion of the whole thing is the beauty that is innocence, and the beauty that's in a child, and you know that whole thing runs through the Colleen Bawn of how she was minded so well and how she was loved so well by her own people, and the creators fell into that trap, and that lovely emotion of innocence of the soil and where she was born and where we're all, I suppose, you know, if we have to learn anything at all from the Colleen Bawn, is the innocence that's in ourselves and our people and the people we meet. And if tonight, you know, a little talk does anything, is to, I suppose, resurrect that innocence inside in ourselves as well, you know, and then the Colleen Bawn will have given us something. The Colleen Bawn will have given us something to carry on and to look at ourselves as well, because, you know, I see the innocence, but I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and I see the innocence of the children, and it's beautiful. There's nothing more powerful. The innocence of a child is so beautiful, and it has to be nourished so much. So that's my little bit, lads. If we have questions and answers, we'll have a go.
Yes, any questions, please? And the audience, if I could just pass this on to you.
Thank you. Joe, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
At the very end, Joe, it showed just a little bit there on the Ballycahane Castle, which is in Manister. So my question was, I wrote down Manister then. So Ballycahane Castle is in Manister, as in, at the very end, my answer came up there. I don't know where Manister is, but I can locate it and go and see it and ask to go and have a little look.
There was Colleen Bawn tours for a long time, because people, you know, did a lot of, I mean, Colleen Bawn is big all over the world and plays all over the world and Broadway and every place else, but they all always ended with a happy ending. There's no happy ending to the Colleen Bawn. That's the creator, bless her. Yeah. So, Croom, that's the Croom.
Okay.
It's only a stone's throw from Croom, and Crecora, and then Glyn, and then Clare, and Ballylongford. That's kind of the geography of now, to get into the inner bits and pieces of that. I haven't the inner bits and pieces of where they are. I'm going to see Scanlan's pier of the gate now, Ellen Hanley's, the house is no longer there, isn't that true, Pat? There's only a pier of a gate there now. And here now, Ballycahane Castle in Manister, Ben O'Sullivan has bought that now. Ben, if anyone remember the murder of Jerry McCabe.
Yes.
Ben there's Pat and Ben at Ballycahane Castle.
So did Ben buy that?
He did. And
he?
Ben's son is there now. Ben, I think Ben passed on there not so long ago. So Ben's son owns that Ballycahane Castle now. So he's there now.
And my second question is, you said Gallows Green, Limerick, Town Hall. Where's that?
The town hall is where the old jail is now. And in Gallows Green, people would argue that it might be in the Clare side. It might be just on the Clare side of the Clare, when they went over the river in the Gall's Bridge, and that it could be the Clare side. They always said that he was hung in Clare. Now, I thought Gallows Green, when I went researching it first, was in Kilrush. So I said, yes, but it wasn't. And Pat Fitzgerald put me right on an awful lot of it, an awful lot of it. And if you're lucky enough to get his book on a resale or something, buy it. It's in the story, everything. It gives the maps. It has the maps and all of Manister and all them places.
And the name of the book is?
The name of the book is The Colleen Bawn by Patrick T. Fitzgerald. Absolute stunning book. So if you see it someplace, Pat, you might even do a rerun.
They're in the libraries.
They're in the libraries,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Have anybody else comment on?
Just a question, Joe. This case become a bigger case because of the influence of Daniel
O'Connell. Oh yeah, I forgot to say.
You said there were other cases in the country similar to this.
Yes.
But this seemed to be more highlighted. Is it because of Daniel O'Connell's
No.
prominence in that?
No, it wasn't. And Daniel O'Connell wrote to his wife. I just lifted the bits and pieces. Daniel O'Connell wrote to his wife on the 15th of March after he defending John Scanlan. And he said to his wife, he said, I defended, he says, John Scanlan today with all the vigor and energy that was inside me. And he said, I wasn't one bit put out that he was hung and that he was sentenced to be hung because a bigger vagabond I had never met in all my life. He wrote those words to his wife on the 15th of March after the trial ended. He said, a bigger vagabond, he wrote to his wife, Daniel O'Connell did. I think, Tony, I think that the theme, the innocence of the child, was the strong thing that all people, both rich and poor, the innocence of the child, maybe if it had been even an older person, but the innocence of a little child only barely gone 15 years of age. She wasn't at the age of consent, and that to me was what made the Colleen Bawn famous. And the Knight of Glyn, now who was no saint either, in his own right, in his own rights. Do you know what I mean? But the Knight of Glyn, but for that, in my mind, Scanlan would have got away with murder. The Knight of Glyn before he pushed it.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, with the fact that Scanlan was convicted first.
Yes.
And that was proved afterwards that he wasn't actually the person who committed the murder.
Correct.
Right? Was there a lot of talk about that? The fact that would people have said that an innocent man was killed, or was
No. The Scanlan has as much to do with the murder in that he was part of it as what Sullivan had. Scanlan was the bully, Sullivan was the I suppose the peasant, in this. Sullivan was the peasant person that was he had to give him whiskey and he primed him up to kill, That's as I'd see it.
Any other questions?
Why would Ben O'Sullivan have bought the place? What do you think?
I have no idea, Joe. I have no idea. I don't think that'll be good land now. That's good land around that area. All that vein of land cutting across there, that's good land.
Yeah.
So you said, Ben, did you know Ben? Yeah, Ted, yeah. So he would have, and maybe he bought it because he knew what he was buying too. Maybe he might have bought history too. I've seen people and they buy history too. They're happy enough to buy history,
But it's not that he's connected to O'Sullivan.
Sorry?
It's not that he's connected to O'Sullivan who murdered the...
No, not that I know of at all. No, not at all. No.
Another question, how did you get the name the Colleen Bawn? Was it because of her innocence or what?
The Colleen Bawn, I think that was, I'm not absolutely sure of that, but there was other Colleen Bawns up in Sligo and places like that. And as I said at the beginning, at the beginning of it, there was a lot of Colleen Bawns killed, and the creators were never, the landlords and the big people, if the saying goes, were always, they were never brought in because the magistrates and the courts, they were the magistrates and the courts themselves, but it was a good thing that Scanlan paid and Sullivan paid for that most dreadful crime. If the creator had gone away or someplace and even if he had left her and say, look, it's over, whatever. But what was the reason to kill the creator and give her that death,
Anyone else? Joe, can I thank you so much for your talk this evening? You brought it to life, really. And well done.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
If anyone wants my book, lads, I have 4 books only left from the echoes from the Civil War. If anyone wants it, they can buy a book off me.
And I think it's time for a raffle.
Raffle. So you have the chance of the book,